Well, I may be heavy, but when it comes to my laptops, I like them to be thin and light. And it's really important if you are an office worker or an undergraduate student and you're moving around. You want something that won't break your arms and you can easily bring around. But the choice is very complicated these days, and just looking here, we have 3 to think about. So when it comes to a thin and light, there are 2 key considerations that you must think about. First, of course, clearly is the weight. And the second thing is the battery life. Now, anything that is more than 1.2 kilograms, in my opinion, is not a thin and light. So let's not even think about that. But in this category, there are actually 2 main considerations. There's 1 kilogram and there's 1.2 kilograms. Now, the difference between this and this, even though they look the same, is 200 grams of weight difference. And the question for you then is, does it really make a significant difference? In my experience, it does. If you're carrying this for a long period of time, or if you're putting it into your backpack where you're putting a lot of other things inside, that 200 grams does make a difference. Now, the other thing you think about, of course, is battery life. But these days it's really simple because most laptops today have something called the Intel Evo certification. Having the Intel Evo certification means that the laptop will run for a minimum of 9 hours on battery under real-life work conditions. The other thing that Intel Evo promises is that if you charge this for 30 minutes, you will get 4 hours of battery life.
The invention of television has made it possible for us to communicate through a combination of sight and sound.
If you have sufficient vintage like me, you will remember the old days when we used to have televisions that were tall and not as wide, almost squarish. Of course, the convergence of consumer electronics and IT has kind of combined everything into a common standard today, the 16:9 aspect ratio. Now, however, these days there is a new trend coming about where people want to have screens with more real estate. That means they're taller and less wide. As a result, there are now 2 alternative aspect ratios to think about. That is the 3:2 on this side, and that is the 16:10. The difference is actually different with every computer, but if you look at these examples here, you can see that the one on the right and left actually lets you see a bit more than the one in the middle. While having a different aspect ratio lets you see more of the documents, when it comes to watching videos, nothing beats the good old 16:9. As you can see, there is very little black space in between, whereas on the other 2, you have letterboxing. Now I want to talk about connectivity. Make sure your laptop has a HDMI port. This makes sure that you can connect to the television and to the projectors outside when you're out making a presentation. The other cool thing is this thing called Thunderbolt 4. Now, Thunderbolt 4 is a new standard, and what it does is this. It's able to deliver video, audio, data, and power all from a single port. And this is the magic port. So when you're at home and you want to sit down and use this to connect to a monitor like this and do work, in the past, you will need to have many cables. You need to have another power cable for the laptop, HDMI cable to connect the laptop to the monitor, and sometimes a USB cable in case there are docks on the monitor that you want to use. With Thunderbolt 4, you really just need to have a single USB-C cable like this, plug it in to the Thunderbolt 4 port, and the image here is automatically sent to the monitor, like that. Okay, now let's talk about specs and price. So generally, this is a 1.2 kilogram range of a laptop, and this is a 1 kilogram range. Going for a 1 kilogram laptop, you have to pay an extra $200 to $300. In addition, the 1 kilogram laptops usually comes with a touchscreen. Touchscreen is pretty good if you're doing presentations or you like to manipulate or even sign with your fingers but not with the pen. Okay? The other big thing you have to think about is the specs. So depending on the specs, you could end up paying another $200 to $300. Right? You must think about the processor, the RAM, the storage, as well as the screen resolution. Now for me, I think the sweet spot is to go for i5 processor, 8GB of RAM, 1TB of SSD storage, and a full HD screen. I think that would be the best sweet spot. And for this machine, in that kind of specs, you can probably get it for about 1.6K.